today to actually deliver another stream of Orb on the Moons of the Earth, the anime series. As if we actually have life, I think. Twitch is being weird again. Okay, we're actually good to go. Which for some reason Twitch kicks in like about 10 years later. Anywho, we actually are today watching the penultimate episode of Orb, which is a weird thing to say out loud because it feels like yesterday the show started, but alas, here we are now. And yeah, I mean, episode 23, masterful. It was as they would call it as the cool kids would call it, it was a go. And yeah, I mean, nothing bad happened. No one died, and everything's hunky dory now. But as we know, that's not the reality we're currently living in. The reality we're currently living in is our favorite character now dead. We are now seeing a new character, and also it gets a little bit funky now, in the kind of very interesting sense, less in the kind of like huh kind of sense. Well, actually, when I first read it, I was like huh, but then I kind of just sat back, like took it all in for osmosis, and actually kind of thought about it. I was like, oh, actually, you know what? It's actually kind of a neat thing. So anyway, it's actually put on Twitch, actually gone live. Before I forget to, I always say that, but I never forget to actually put on Twitter actually gone live. It just feels weird to say the series is actually over in like a week. I'm losing Severance in a week as well, like in 2 weeks as well. I'm like, bro, I don't know if I can survive that Severance and Orb. Right, watching episode 24. Cool. It's like one of those things that when you get used to something and then it goes, you're like, oh shit, I just realized I pressed 4 and 4 starts the stream, doesn't it? Oh, 1 second. There we go. Right. Let me open up what's it called? Chatterino, just briefly. And let's get a show on the road. Let's actually start this thing in 3, 2, 1. Let's start this thing absolutely now. I said I've actually been very long been waiting for this to be adapted because it's a very interesting like epilogue, so to speak. It comes more clear later on, but like it's just a very interesting thing to do at the end. Bruh. Also, I'm kind of wondering if they changed the opening this week as well. Because we always know the person in the front of the opening just has like the worst fate ever. So I'm just like, nah, I can't do that to Albert as well, though. Okay, so I wasn't off on the pronunciation of that because that Arate kind of screwed me over in the manga. I was like, oh, how do I pronounce that correctly? Because Arate. Depending on what the opening is, I'll have to like get my thoughts in after the opening for a bit. I'm gonna like TLDR on my thoughts of the last episode during the opening, but if they change it, I'll have to pay attention. always kind of feel like it's very interesting how they do handle these like talks, so to speak, in this show. Because I always kind of feel like it's one of those things of like chasing your dreams and actually like how does one do it and actually whether or not you have that support behind you. But it's always been interesting how the characters and their family deal with these kind of like talks. It's a very like insignificant thing, but I see it a lot in shows, and it kind of feel like it's very interesting how they actually handle it in this show, so to speak. If that actually makes any sense, I'm not even too sure. Holy shit, they've changed the opening completely. Huh? They've changed the opening. There's no Smith or anyone on the opening or Hubert or anyone like that. Oh, no fucking way. Okay, so he's still there, which makes sense. Okay, so Druck is still there. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, still kept that part in. Fuck you, anime. Still no Jolenta on the where the houses are. Okay. So Draka still stays, she doesn't leave. Uh-huh. Okay, so they still keep Raffle in the they still keep Raffle. Oh! Okay, so that's interesting. So they've changed the so they changed it because it's an alternate, I guess, reality, so to speak, if that makes sense. So I'm guessing the reason to why they did it that way, is to differentiate it from, the prior one, I guess, if that makes sense. I kinda like how they removed, 'cause I think Schmidt, Raffle, anyone's at the beginning of the opening in, like, the sketches, but you don't but then in this timeline, they're not there because they're not a part of this timeline, if that makes sense. If that if because beforehand, there wasn't a date on the, part of the world they were in, but this one has a date on it. But I guess we'll see more of that later on. But I like that. That's quite cool. But yeah, what I was trying to say during the opening as well, because I can't say it 'cause I was trying to pay attention to the changes, is the fact that I liked how they humanize Nowak in the end as well. How they do say that he's not the villain, which is actually true because he's not really a villain in this world. He's just a man. He's a tragic man, so to speak. It's the how conviction and revenge can in theory skewer you to a point that you have no return. How you think what you're doing is just and right when it's not. But I also like how he has the necklace as well in the opening. How it signifies that he carries it on still, even though it's not the same place that we've seen before. It's very much that he carries the torch still, which I kind of like. I like that. Because this slipped me up during the manga as well. Like the priest character, like completely. I was like, huh. okay, huh, the entire time. I feel like this is gonna be one of those ones that I would probably say to watch together because it's a lot to take in. This whole entire part of the manga, well, and also subsequently the anime. What I was kind of hoping they might have done with the opening is they played the second half of Kaiju instead, just to kind of hone in the idea that it's not the same as the prior one, if that makes sense. That would have been a kind of a nice like way to kind of make it full circle. Pardon the pun. And I feel like as well, it's very interesting that this part of the series does also put emphasis on the aspect of learning as well. It kind of feels like the reality that they kind of envisioned within the episodes prior, the idea that it could exist a world where helocentrism and Catholicism, correct term, could exist. Is the idea that because beforehand, if you'd learned the wrong thing, well, boyo, there you go, kind of thing. But now with this world, it kind of feels like, well, it's still early days. We don't necessarily know the full outcome, but it doesn't really feel like it feels less like you're on edge with the idea. It's always kind of how I rationalize this part of the series is like it feels like where you go from part 6 of JoJo to part 7 of JoJo. Is what it kind of feels like, but less the sense that a character ends the entire universe. But it's less that part of it, but more so like it's a new start, so to speak. Yeah, see, it's just like stuff like this. It kind of feels like, it doesn't it feels different, if that makes sense. It's obvious it's different, but it feels different. You're not under the impression thus far that there's any sense of like, looming fear that he's learning something he shouldn't, or he's doing something that is against something, if that makes sense. Still, I kind of like I said, that conversation there does in theory you know, pose a little bit of an interesting concept on this whole entire thing, but it doesn't again, it feels less like this one, it feels more so like if it doesn't bet in his eyes, if it doesn't better the humanity, then don't do it, so to speak. Besides the fact that if you do the wrong thing, boom, basically. I have been waiting for this. I have been waiting for this for a long time. This is actually like burst my brain the first time I read it. I was like, "What the fuck?" Because it's like nonchalantly, here's Raffle again. You get what I mean? Because the first time you kind of see this, you're like, "What the fuck? How's Raffle here?" Clearly, it's not the same Raffle as it was beforehand because he's a lot taller. But it's like it doesn't. The issue is it doesn't. It's not an issue, so to speak. But it just nonchalantly just says here he is, basically. I kind of feel like the whole idea of paths and what a person goes on is also a massive thing within what it makes it's kind of obvious, if you get what I mean. But I feel like even more so with this arc, it kind of hones that idea in like what if kind of thing. What if Raph went down a different route and, didn't, whatever happened episode 3 didn't happen basically. I kind of feel like what if scenarios are like not too uncommon, especially within like the medium of manga and comic books and films. But I kind of feel like here even more so, it's a very interesting like deviation, an interesting way to end it as well. Because what I thought originally when I read this, like for the first time, because a lot of people actually did in theory like help me a lot to understand this whole entire arc. This is why I really appreciate it. Is I thought it's like a whole Ray Magini scenario from like Simpsons. You know how like Ray Magini's imaginary to Homer. I thought the same thing applied to Raffle when I first read it. I thought maybe he's actually just not here, and everyone's just kind of imagining him there, so to speak, or he's just someone else, but he's being projected as Raffle. That was my original thought process when I read it. But when you kind of like reread it and actually then like look at the theories, it sort of makes the thought process of Uto who wrote it. It starts to make sense. That word also screwed me over as well. Thalmazine? Thalmazine? So I kind of feel like the anime is doing its best to kind of tell us it isn't the same universe. Like very, very bluntly tell us. Like the opening kind of hones that idea in. So I kind of feel like what he's trying to tell us is that we're meant to treat this as what if X didn't happen or what if X was different, so to speak. Oh no, he's Orban. He's Orban. So I'm impressed that they actually didn't put it as a double episode though. 'Cause I kind of felt like it would work better as a double episode. Interesting. Well, I kind of wonder where they're gonna leave it on. There's an interesting place they could leave this on. That might or might make you go, ah. Okay, maybe not this week, maybe next week then. I was gonna say they could have left it at that moment. That would have been like a really good cliffhanger, if I think. But yeah, I kind of feel like I said beforehand, I kind of feel like this might have worked better as just a double episode. 24 and 25 came out at the same time. 'Cause otherwise it doesn't feel disjointed as much as it kind of just works better just reading it or watching it in one go. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was a more like, I guess what's the word? Relaxed episode, so to speak, because last week's episode was, this one kind of feels a lot more relaxed. And it's interesting like what this arc really does in theory pose towards the whole entire like narrative, because again, the narrative itself is finished. Like this is the epilogue of the series. We don't This isn't necessarily like a continuation of where the prior arc finished. This is its own thing. And like I said, the anime does in theory tell us that. It's not really trying to tell us this is a continuation. The idea that the opening doesn't have anyone in the opening part of it tells us this is its own thing. But I kind of find the placement of it to be interesting because again, you have what happened beforehand, then you have this. It's like you have a world where of what could have been, essentially. A world free to an extent of, the idea of being able to actually, like, freely learn, then actually be able to actually, like, listen. Oh, that's actually kinda cool as well. I like that ending as well. The idea of learning in this universe, this one, feels vastly different to what it was like in Raffles' universe or in Akosi Pedeni Jolenta Noak's universe. Beforehand, you kinda always had this thought of, "Oh shit, if they were to be found out, they're fucking dead." But in this one, you don't feel that as much. You feel the sense that it's like, it's the person's own will to learn that's actually what drives them forward. Yeah, don't get me wrong, there was the father saying that if you unless it benefits humanity, then don't do it, but you had Raffles say, "Fuck that, just do it anyway." And yeah, that's kinda like the overarching thing. You have less of, like, the possible, like, repercussions, more so it's like what others think about it effectively, in a less kind of violent sense. And I kind of find it to be very interesting because again, it's very much like the world that we would have loved to have seen, like the world we saw previously existing. Granted, at the same time, the way Antoni was way Father Antoni was saying it at the end did in theory pose this concept, like the idea that yeah, they could have just lived coexisting with heliocentrism. Heliocentrism wasn't going to destroy the church or anything like that. It was just a thing that was there effectively, and I kind of feel like that was the problem. Like Noak didn't realize that part, and he thought it would bring destruction of Christianity or Catholicism or religion itself, I guess. And now we have this world where basically, yeah, don't get me wrong, there is dangers of learning certain things, but it doesn't feel so volatile, if that makes sense. It feels very much more relaxed. I kind of feel like it's a very interesting way to end the series because this kind of feels more in line, I guess, to an extent with a real world scenario. Like we don't really don't get me wrong. It's not entirely like this idea that any single learning isn't like eyebrow raising to an extent to certain people, but you know what I mean. Is that whole entire idea that it feels what I'm trying to say I'm trying to get my thoughts out. What I'm trying to say is that it feels more relaxed. It doesn't feel so on edge, and I kind of like that idea. Like it doesn't feel like you're always constantly fearing for the characters. This one feels more like, okay, well, I can just sit back and learn a few things. And Raffle being there is an interesting idea as well, because Raffle is the one who kind of to an extent started it all, and actually now we're seeing him again, but this is a very different Raffle. It's not the same Raffle we saw beforehand. So I like how this series did in theory pose like, yeah, it's a very like very kind of way to end the series, but it's a very interesting way of doing it as well. That's what I kinda like about it, is the idea that I understand the intention of the writer for why he's doing what he's doing here. Like, I understand why he decided to end the series this way, because, yeah, the series is ended, Orb has finished, but this is a different Orb. This is the Orb that could have been, effectively. I kinda like that. I find things like this to be very fascinating. Like, this idea, like, an alternate universe. That's why I said it's like part 7 of JoJo, more so the ending of part 7, where with Diego and everyone. It kinda feels more like that part of the series, and it will become more apparent next week with the final episode. Again, I kinda would prefer if they did it as one. episode, like one 40-minute slot, just to kind of do the whole entire arc, because I kind of feel like the arc works better if you just digest it in one go, because then you can actually think about it and actually then go rewatch it or reread it and actually be like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Because again, there's a lot here. This arc has a lot going on, and I don't even think forgetting like one piece of information would kind of break the entire arc, but I kind of feel like just watching it in one go does benefit it more. But yeah, it feels weird to say the series is over next week, and I don't want to see it end. That's the problem. I want to see it go on forever, but alas, the series is ending, and I just I'm sad. That's a major thing. So I only gotta lie down for a long while, cry that the series is over next week, cry that my comfort series is over, even though it's brought me a lot of stress and crying as well. But I love it dearly. That's the major thing. I just love it. I love it a lot. So yeah, that is me done for today. So as always, actually have enjoyed this whole entire stream as a whole. And as always, do leave a follow on Twitch where you do see streams live. Leave a like on YouTube as well. Leave a sub as well, both to help quite a lot. Actually, also tell me what you think about this episode as well, because I actually do really like how everyone else sees this, how everyone else sees this arc as well. It's a very interesting topic in the entire series, even more so than prior parts of this whole entire series as well. I just kind of find this part of the series really fascinating. And as always, you actually have enjoyed this whole entire series as a whole, this stream as a whole on YouTube and Twitch. And as always, do a follow on Twitter as well. Helps quite a bit. Also, actually, then know when any streams go live and any other streams I may do as well. So until next time, with the final episode of Orb on the Moons of the Earth, the anime series, I will see you guys then. Bye for now.